going to discuss a report about mental models. These mental models. According to James Clear, a mental model is an explanation of how something works. It is a concept, framework, or worldview that you carry around in your mind to help you interpret the world and understand the relationship between things. Mental models are deeply held beliefs about how world works. And according also to Mike Maples, mental models are frameworks for making decisions that maximize the probability of having a good outcome. This definition, according to James Clear and Mike Maples, is that a mental model is a construct or representation that can be used to think, reason, or take action more effectively. When we learn or useful mental models, we gain a certain amount of power over what the model helps us to understand, which allows us to think, reason, or take action more effectively. For example, when we learn a big idea, our mind creates representation of what we have learned, which later acts like a map, which leads us back to our understanding to the topic. This map or representation is what we consider a mental model. This model can later be recalled to our conscious awareness easily and more quickly than relearning again the entire subject or lessons. Another examples in connection with mental models, when we read new information, we are often building a mental models. And also, when we imagine something, we are often building mental models. Mental models can also help students and teachers, where mental models help a student to comprehend content knowledge and also solve problems related to the principle being taught. Mental models can also help teachers to plan with the end in mind, and teachers can be able to identify what the students already know with the help of mental model. To put it simply, mental models are set of our values, beliefs, ideas that we consciously or unconsciously create based on our own experience, which also guide us and help us to understand life.
People tend to organize their experiences into patterns. We use these patterns to form what are called mental models. With each new experience, our brain chunks the information into a pile that we use to build up this model of the world around us. Schemas are the word we use for these little chunks of that model. Schemata are the building blocks of knowledge we use to make sense of what we see. They're the things in our head that allow us to form a mental representation of our experiences. The cognitive scientist Barry Wadsworth describes schemata as index cards filed in the brain. These index cards hold information about past experiences, mental images of objects, results from past actions, and little files on more abstract knowledge like chemical reactions or English literature. We use these little index cards to tell us what to do or think when we encounter new stuff. They form the basis of our mental model of the world. Let me give you another example of cognitive model building that you as a big boy or girl can relate to right now. I spent 6 months living in the Czech Republic. I don't speak Czech. But when I went to a restaurant and the waiter came up to the table and said something that made no sense to me, I knew that he was probably asking what I'd like to drink. I don't need to know the actual words he's saying because I have a model in my mind for how the restaurant experience plays out. May I take your drink order? Disappear while preparing drinks? Return with drinks. Are you ready to order food? The waiter could speak Klingon, and so long as the basic customs are the same, I just have to point at stuff on the menu. I've built a mental model for a restaurant based on past experiences, schema, that is applicable all over the world. How do we develop and sometimes change our mental models? Cognitive scientist Bob Siegler describes the following very relatable scenario. A 2-year-old child sees a man who is bald on top of his head and has long, frizzy hair out the sides. To his mother's horror, the toddler shouts, "Clown! Clown!" The child is assimilating this new experience with his schema for clown. The boy's mother explains to her young son that the man was not a clown, and that even though his hair was like a clown's, he wasn't wearing a funny costume and wasn't doing silly things to make people laugh. The boy is able to change, or what we call accommodate, his schema of clown, and make this idea fit better to a standard concept of clown. Usually, we accommodate our existing mental models without having to fundamentally change them. This is a relatively painless process, and we usually strive to accommodate in this way as much as we can get away with. Our brains are fundamentally lazy. We resist changing fundamental models without significant reasons to do so. This is our challenge